Hello, Diane. You look beautiful tonight.
You're married to my son. You can call me mom or mother, but not by my first name like we're friends at some community college.
There's an old proverb that says, when your mother-in-law is in your home, you must choose between your past and your future. Some men choose yesterday, but one man chose tomorrow.
The diamond ring caught the light as Simone gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white against the black leather. Her other hand rested on her belly, 5 months pregnant and glowing with a joy that felt too fragile to speak out loud. "Just get through dinner," she whispered to herself, pulling into the driveway of the Henderson family home in Texas City. "Just smile, eat their food, and leave." But deep down, Simone knew this wasn't going to be just any dinner. The house loomed before her, a massive 2-story brick mansion with white columns and perfectly manicured hedges. It was beautiful, sure, but it felt cold, like a place where warmth went to die. Simone stepped out of her silver BMW, and immediately her mother-in-law's voice pierced through the evening air from the front porch. "Well, well, well, look who finally decided to show up." Diane Henderson stood at the top of the porch steps, one hand on her hip, the other holding a martini. She wore an expensive cream-colored dress that probably cost more than Simone's car payment, but her expression was anything but warm. Her eyes, dark and judgmental, just like her son's, traveled from the top of Simone's head to her swollen belly. Simone forced a smile. She'd been practicing this smile in the mirror for the past week. "Hello, Diane. You look beautiful tonight," Simone said, climbing the steps carefully. "Don't Diane me," the older woman snapped, turning to walk back inside. "You're married to my son. You can call me mom or mother, but not by my first name like we're friends at some community college." Simone's smile didn't falter, but something inside her twisted. She tried calling her mother exactly once. Diane had shut that down real quick, saying it felt inauthentic coming from someone like Simone. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and expensive perfume. The dining room was set for dinner, a long table with white linen, gold-rimmed plates and fresh flowers arranged in a crystal vase. It was the kind of dinner that said, "We have money and we want you to know it." Marcus's father, Roland Henderson, sat at the head of the table reading the financial section of the newspaper. He looked up when Simone entered and gave her a tight nod. That was probably the warmest greeting she'd get from him all night. "Simone," Marcus rushed from the kitchen and pulled her into his arms, kissing the top of her head. He was tall, 6'2", with broad shoulders and the same sharp features as his mother, but his eyes held something hers didn't. Kindness, love, and tonight just a hint of worry. "Hey, baby," Simone whispered, holding onto him just a second longer than necessary. Marcus pulled back and placed his hand on her belly. The baby kicked, and his whole face lit up with joy. "Our daughter's going to be so beautiful," he said softly. Diane's voice came from the kitchen, sharp as a knife. "Marcus, come help me with the plates. We need to talk about the firm's new merger." Marcus squeezed Simone's hand. "I'll be right back. Sit down, get comfortable." But as he left, Simone saw his shoulders tense. He knew what was coming too. The dinner started off quiet, almost too quiet. Roland read between bites. Diane talked about the country club and some fundraiser event she was organizing. Marcus tried to keep conversations light and normal. Simone ate her perfectly cooked salmon and tried not to take up too much space. Then Diane's sister, Brenda, arrived late. She swept into the dining room with her husband, Donald, both carrying bottles of expensive wine and loud voices that filled every corner of the room. "Simone, look at you, Mama," Brenda squealed, giving her a genuine hug. Brenda was different from Diane, warmer, more open. "You're glowing. How are you feeling?" "I'm good," Simone said, grateful for the kindness. "Really good. Just excited to meet our baby girl." "Girl," Donald laughed loudly. "Marcus, you must be nervous about that. All girl power in your house now." Everyone chuckled, and for a moment the tension in the room lifted. But Diane's jaw clenched. She took a long sip of wine. "Let's talk about something important," Diane said, setting down her glass with a deliberate clink. "The baby." The room went silent. Even the ice cubes in the glasses seemed to stop moving. "What about the baby?" Marcus asked carefully, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. Diane smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, we need to discuss the child's future. The Henderson family has certain standards, certain expectations. We have a legacy, Marcus, and I'm sure Simone understands that our grandchild will be raised with the proper values." Simone felt her stomach drop. "She will be," Simone said quietly. "We both want the best for our daughter." "Yes, but you see," Diane continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "the Hendersons have a reputation to maintain. We're not like, well, we're just not like most families. We've worked very hard to get where we are, and we don't let that slip away." "Mom," Marcus said, warning in his voice, "not now." But Diane was just getting started. She stood up, and suddenly the dining room felt smaller. "Your family, Simone, tell me about your family," Diane said, not actually asking a question. "Your mother works in, what is it, retail, and your father?" Simone began. "An electrician, if I remember correctly," Diane said, speaking over her. She looked at her sister. "An electrician, in Texas City. Nothing wrong with honest work, of course. But you see the difference, don't you, Simone? The Hendersons own businesses. We employ electricians." Brenda looked mortified. She put her hand on her sister's arm. "Diane, come on, that's not fair." "It's just reality," Diane said smoothly, sitting back down. She took another sip of wine. "I'm simply pointing out that there are different kinds of people in this world. Some people are builders, some people are workers, and sometimes the two shouldn't mix." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Marcus's face turned dark red. He stood up so fast his chair scraped backward with a screech. "That's enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Simone is my wife. She is your family. You don't get to talk to her like that." "Sit down, Marcus," Roland said coldly from the head of the table. "Your mother is speaking truth." Simone felt tears prickling her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She was 7 months pregnant, hormonal, and sitting at a table full of people who apparently thought she wasn't good enough to carry their grandchild. But she kept her voice steady when she spoke. "I'm sorry my family isn't impressive enough for you," Simone said quietly. "But my mother taught me to work hard and be kind to people. My father taught me that dignity comes from who you are inside, not from how much money you have. If our daughter learns those values, I think she'll be just fine." For a second there was silence. Brenda nodded slightly, her eyes full of sympathy. Then Diane laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Simone, that's adorable, truly. You actually believe that matters more than breeding, don't you?" Diane leaned forward and her eyes were cold. "Let me tell you something. I did my research when Marcus first brought you home. Your mother works at a Target. Your father drives a truck. Your grandmother lives in subsidized housing in the 3rd Ward. Tell me, where exactly do your children think they're going to fit in our world?" That's when Marcus stood up again. This time he didn't sit back down. "We're leaving," he said, reaching for Simone's hand. "Come on." But Simone was frozen, not because of Diane's words, though they cut deep, but because she felt something sharp in her lower belly, a pain that made her gasp. Marcus noticed immediately. "Baby, what's wrong?" I don't know," Simone whispered. "It hurts." Diane's expression didn't change. If anything, she looked annoyed. But Brenda was on her feet, real concern on her face. "We need to get you to the hospital," Brenda said. "Now." Marcus scooped Simone up into his arms and headed for the door. Brenda grabbed her purse and followed. "Marcus," Diane called after him, "don't be dramatic. Pregnant women feel pain all the time." But Marcus didn't turn around. He carried his wife to the car, and in that moment, Simone realized something important. The real question wasn't whether she was good enough for the Henderson family. The real question was, how much would this family cost her? How much would their judgment, their cruelty, their obsession with status destroy what she and Marcus had built together? And as Marcus drove toward Texas City Memorial Hospital with the engine racing and Simone's hand gripping his, she didn't have an answer. If you're feeling stressed just watching Simone go through this, imagine what she's experiencing. Hit that like button if you're rooting for her to stand up to Diane. And make sure you subscribe because the next part of this story is going to blow your mind. The hospital lights were too bright, too white, too sterile. Simone lay on the bed in the emergency room, her hand gripping Marcus's like it was a life raft in a storm. The doctor, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Patterson, was moving an ultrasound wand across her belly, her expression neutral in a way that made Simone's anxiety spike. "Tell me what happened," Dr. Patterson said, her eyes on the monitor. "We were at dinner. My mother said some things," Simone began, but then stopped. "That wasn't what mattered. I felt this sharp pain right here." She pointed to her lower left side. Dr. Patterson nodded slowly. She kept moving the wand, studying the screen. Marcus squeezed Simone's hand. "The baby's okay, right? Our daughter's okay." "The baby is fine," Dr. Patterson said, and Simone felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. "The heartbeat is strong. Everything looks normal." "Then what's wrong with me?" Simone asked. "You're experiencing some spotting," Dr. Patterson said carefully. "It's not uncommon in pregnancy, but combined with the pain, I want to be cautious. I think you have a small placental abruption." The words meant nothing and everything at the same time. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, his voice tight. "It means a small portion of the placenta has separated from the uterine wall. It's mild and we've caught it early, but we need to monitor you. I want to admit you for observation for at least 24 hours. "She has to stay." Marcus looked like he was about to argue, but then seemed to think better of it. "Yes, and I'm going to recommend she take it very easy for the next few weeks. No stress, no heavy lifting, bed rest as much as possible." Stress, like she could control Diane Henderson. As they wheeled Simone up to the maternity floor, Marcus was on his phone. She could hear him talking to someone, probably his mother. "No, Mom, we're not discussing this right now. Simone and the baby needed medical attention and she's going to be staying in the hospital overnight. No, I don't care if you're embarrassed. That's not my concern right now." He hung up and came back to hold Simone's hand as they got her settled into a private room. The next morning, Simone woke to sunlight streaming through the window and Marcus asleep in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed. His chin was rough with stubble, and he looked exhausted. He'd stayed all night, of course. That was just who Marcus was. A nurse came in to check her vitals, and Simone asked for some tea and toast. She was starving and nauseous at the same time, which didn't make sense but seemed to be the theme of her pregnancy. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. Simone's heart sank. She knew that knock. Diane Henderson entered the room like she was walking onto a fashion runway, designer bag on her arm, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She was wearing a perfectly tailored pantsuit and had clearly come straight from somewhere important. Behind her came Roland, looking uncomfortable and distant as always. "Well," Diane said, looking at Simone in the hospital bed like she was viewing an exhibit at a museum. "This is dramatic." "Hello to you too, Diane," Simone said quietly. "I'll be in the hallway," Roland said quickly, retreating before Diane could respond. Marcus woke up at the sound of voices. He stood immediately, putting himself subtly between his mother and his wife. "Mom, I told you not to come. And I ignored you because I'm your mother and I have a right to know what's happening with my grandchild," Diane snapped. She pulled a chair over and sat down, crossing her legs. "So, what's the damage?" Simone had a mild placental abruption. The doctor says she and the baby are fine, but she needs to rest for a few weeks. Diane's expression shifted, not to concern, but to calculation. Simone could practically see her reworking her social calendar in her mind. A few weeks. That's unfortunate timing, Diane said. We have the Cancer Society Gala in 3 weeks. I was counting on you both to attend. It's very prestigious and people will be asking about your wife. Your wife is currently in a hospital bed because of the stress you caused her, Marcus said, his voice ice cold. And you're worried about a gala. I'm worried about the family's image, Diane corrected sharply. There are already whispers, you know, about how quickly you married her, about her background, and now this medical drama at a family dinner. People talk, Marcus. Simone felt something inside her snap. Get out, she said quietly. Diane turned to look at her, surprised. Excuse me. Get out of my hospital room, Simone repeated, louder this time. You came here to gossip about me, to worry about your reputation, to make me feel like I'm a burden on your perfect family. I don't want you here, and Marcus, your son, he doesn't want you here either. So please leave. Diane's face turned red. She stood up, her chair scraping backward. You know what? I have been nothing but civil to you despite your obvious inadequacy for this family, and this is how you repay me, with disrespect. Civil, Simone laughed, and it sounded slightly hysterical even to her own ears. You compared my family to servants, Diane. You questioned my ability to raise my own child. You made me feel so small, so unwelcome, so unwanted, and you did it on purpose, because somewhere deep down you resent me for taking your son away from you. The words hung in the air. They were true, and they both knew it. Diane's jaw clenched. When she spoke, her voice was low and dangerous. You think you're so smart, don't you? You got pregnant to trap him. You knew Marcus was vulnerable after his breakup with Keisha, and you pounced. Got yourself knocked up immediately. Very clever. Marcus made a sound like a wounded animal. That's enough, Mother. Get out now. Marcus, she's clearly manipulating. Out, he roared, pointing at the door. Diane left, her heels clicking angrily against the hospital floor. But before she disappeared, she turned back one more time. You wait, she said to Simone. When this baby is born, you'll see. When Marcus realizes how much work it is, how much responsibility it is, he'll come crawling back to people like us. People who actually have substance. And you'll be left behind, scrambling to figure out why your marriage fell apart. Then she was gone. Marcus sat back down heavily in the chair and put his face in his hands. I'm sorry, he said, his voice muffled. I'm so sorry, she shouldn't have. Marcus, Simone said softly, come here. He moved to the bed and sat beside her, and she pulled him close. Despite being the one in the hospital, despite carrying their child, despite all the emotional trauma Diane had just dumped on them, Simone comforted her husband. We're going to be okay, she whispered. Your mother is wrong about all of it. But doubt was creeping in now, like water through cracks in a dam. Over the next 3 days, as Simone recovered in the hospital, she had time to think about everything Diane had said. About being trapped, about not being good enough, about Marcus eventually leaving her for someone more appropriate. Marcus stayed with her the whole time, barely leaving her side. He brought her favorite snacks, downloaded movies, read books out loud when she couldn't sleep. He was present, loving, and completely committed. But Diane's words were there too, whispering in the dark corners of Simone's mind. When Dr. Patterson finally cleared her to go home, she gave her strict instructions. Bed rest, no stress, no heavy activity, and follow-up appointments twice a week. Marcus drove carefully, like he was transporting something precious, and Simone supposed he was. Their apartment was small but beautiful, a one-bedroom with big windows and a view of the bay. Marcus had decorated it while she was in the hospital, putting up soft string lights and fresh flowers in the bedroom. I'm going to take some time off work, he said, helping her to the couch. I want to be here with you. You can't just leave the firm, Simone protested. Your mother. My mother is not my concern right now, Marcus said firmly. You are. Our daughter is, that's it. That's all that matters. He meant it. She could see it in his face. But the seed was planted. The next 2 weeks were quiet, almost too quiet. Marcus went to his part-time consulting work, but he did it from home. Simone rested, read pregnancy books, and tried not to think about Diane's words. Then one afternoon, while Marcus was on a work call, Simone decided to get up and stretch her legs. She wasn't supposed to, but she was going crazy lying in bed. She was walking to the kitchen when she heard Marcus's voice through the office door, which was slightly ajar. I know it's not ideal, but we're working through it. No, Mom, she's not manipulative. Look, you have to stop calling her the girl. Her name is Simone. I don't care what you heard from Keisha. Keisha is my ex. What she says doesn't matter. Simone's heart sank. Keisha, his ex-girlfriend, the one his mother had mentioned that night. Mom, I have to go, Marcus said. Simone's resting and I don't want her to worry, because she doesn't need the stress. Her doctor was very clear. Yes, I know you think you're helping, but you're not. You're making things worse. He hung up. Simone backed away quietly and got back into bed. When Marcus came out and checked on her, she pretended to be asleep. That night, she lay awake thinking about everything. About how Diane had gotten into his head. About whether Marcus really believed in their marriage or if he was just going through the motions. About whether the baby was safe with all this drama. By the time Simone was allowed to leave bed rest, she felt like she was walking on eggshells in her own marriage. Are you sitting in your feelings right now? Because Simone is too. The drama is building and we're not even at the climax yet. The baby came on a Tuesday morning in October. After 7 weeks of bed rest, careful monitoring, and a relationship that felt like it was walking a tightrope, Simone went into labor at 3 a.m. Marcus drove her to the hospital while she breathed through contractions, and by 2:37 p.m., their daughter came into the world screaming and beautiful and perfect. Her name was Zara Henderson. She was 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with a full head of dark curly hair and her daddy's serious eyes. When the nurse placed her on Simone's chest, Simone cried so hard she could barely breathe. All the fear, all the doubt, all of Diane's poisonous words fell away. This was her daughter, hers and Marcus's, and nobody was going to change that. Marcus kissed them both over and over again, tears streaming down his face. She's beautiful, he whispered. Look at her, she's perfect. Just like her mama, Simone said, looking up at him. For a moment, everything was right in the world. But the phone call started before Simone was even out of recovery. Diane called, then Roland, then Brenda, who actually sounded happy and genuine, then extended family members Simone had never met, all wanting to come visit, all wanting to see the baby. Marcus tried to buffer her from it all, but the messages kept coming. Diane texted constantly about when she could come to the hospital, about the photos Simone would need to send, about how they'd need to plan the baby announcements through proper channels, whatever that meant. When they were finally discharged from the hospital 3 days later, Simone felt exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. Her body was healing from birth. Her mind was overwhelmed with the constant demands of a newborn, and her heart was breaking under the weight of her husband's divided loyalty. Marcus had talked to his mother every single day in the hospital, not to be mean or anything, but Simone noticed. She saw him taking calls in the hallway. She heard him updating his parents on Zara's weight, her feeding schedule, her sleep patterns. It was all normal stuff, the kind of stuff grandparents should know. But it stung anyway. Because while he was updating his mother, he wasn't massaging Simone's aching back. While he was texting family photos, he wasn't asking if Simone needed anything. While he was fielding questions about the baby, he wasn't checking on his wife's emotional state after the trauma of the past few months. A week after they came home, there was a knock on the door at 10 a.m. Simone was sitting on the couch, topless with a nursing blanket over her shoulder, leaking breast milk from the baby not properly latched, with spit up on her shoulder and her hair in a messy bun on top of her head. She was not ready for visitors. But Marcus opened the door, and in walked Diane, Roland, Brenda, and a woman Simone had never seen before, carrying what looked like an expensive diaper bag. "Oh, let me see my grandbaby," Diane cooed, but her eyes were critical as they took in Simone's appearance. "It's not a good time," Simone said quietly. "I'm feeding." "Oh, you can do that with company," Diane said breezily, settling herself on the couch next to Simone like she owned the place. "This is Margaret. She's a nanny. I hired her to come help you. She has experience with Henderson children." Simone felt her jaw clench. "We didn't ask for a nanny, Diane." "Well, you need one," the older woman replied, reaching over and adjusting the blanket covering Simone without permission. "You look exhausted, and clearly you need help." The woman Diane brought, Margaret, was probably in her 50s, with a crisp white uniform and an expression that suggested she was not thrilled about being there. "Let me take the baby," Margaret said to Simone, her voice professional and cold. "You can rest." "No," Simone said firmly. "Zara is fine with me." "She looks hungry," Margaret observed. "And you're not producing enough milk by the looks of it. We should supplement with formula." "My doctor said," Simone began. "Your doctor is not a Henderson," Diane interrupted. "Margaret comes very highly recommended. She raised 3 of my cousin's children. She knows what she's doing." Marcus stood in the corner looking helpless. This was his family. These were his people. And Simone could see him torn between loyalty to his mother and support for his wife. "Thank you for offering," Simone said to Diane, keeping her voice steady. "But I don't need a nanny. I need my family to respect my choices as Zara's mother." Diane smiled that cold smile again. "We're trying to help you succeed, Simone. Motherhood can be overwhelming for someone like you, someone without the kind of support system we have. We thought it would be nice to have professional help. Someone like you." Those words were going to haunt Simone forever. "Get her out," Simone said quietly. "I'm sorry." Diane leaned back like she hadn't heard correctly. "I said get her out. I don't want Margaret in my house. I don't want your help. And I don't want you making decisions about my daughter." Simone's voice was getting louder and the baby was getting upset. "This is my home, my baby, my family, and you need to respect that or you're not welcome here." Diane's face turned red. "You know what? I have been more than patient with you, Simone. I have tolerated your rudeness, your ingratitude, and your clearly inadequate parenting skills. And this is how you repay me." "You've been patient." Simone felt something inside her break open. "Diane, from the moment I met you, you made it clear that you thought I was beneath you. You insulted my family. You questioned my pregnancy. You sent me stress so severe that I ended up in the hospital. And then you waltz in here after I've been home for a week with a newborn, looking exhausted and vulnerable, and you act like you're doing me a favor by telling me I'm not good enough to be my own daughter's mother." Marcus moved toward Simone, but she held up her hand. "Don't," she said to him. "Don't make excuses for her. Don't apologize for her. Don't let her divide us." She turned back to Diane. "You want to know something? I'm proud of my mother. I'm proud that she got up every day and worked at Target to help support our family. I'm proud of my father for being an electrician, for having a skill and using it to provide for us. And I'm proud of myself for being smart enough to get a college degree, to build a career, and to be a woman who's good enough to love your son, even though you think I'm not." "Simone," Marcus started. "The question," Simone continued, tears streaming down her face, "is whether you, Marcus, are going to stand with me, your wife, your daughter, or whether you're going to keep one foot in your mother's world, hopping to appease her, hopping to be the perfect son." The room went silent. You could hear the baby's whimper, the traffic outside, the blood rushing in everyone's ears. Marcus looked at his mother, then he looked at his wife, then he took a breath. "Mom, Brenda, Dad, Margaret, I need you all to leave, right now." Diane's eyes widened. Marcus, don't be ridiculous. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being a husband. I'm being a father, and Simone is right. He took Simone's hand. You've been nothing but cruel to my wife, and I've been enabling it because I was too scared to disappoint you, but I'm done. You want to have a relationship with me and my daughter. You respect Simone as the mother of my child. You respect her choices, and you respect her in my home. Otherwise, you don't come here anymore. Roland started to say something, but Brenda put her hand on his arm. He's right, Diane, Brenda said quietly. You've been awful to Simone and you need to apologize. Apologize to her? Diane stood up, her voice ice cold. I will do no such thing. If you want to throw away your family for some girl you've known for 2 years, that's your choice. But don't come crying to me when it all falls apart. She walked to the door, her heels clicking like a metronome marking time. Roland followed her, looking sad but resigned. Margaret was already gone. Brenda lingered for a moment. I'm sorry, she said to Simone. I should have done more, should have called her out sooner, but for what it's worth, you're a good mother, and you're good for Marcus. She squeezed Simone's shoulder gently. Congratulations on Zara, she's beautiful. Then it was just the 3 of them. Marcus sat beside Simone on the couch and pulled both of them close. Simone was shaking, but not from anger anymore. She was shaking with relief, with release, with the feeling of finally being seen and chosen by her husband. I'm sorry, Marcus whispered. I'm so sorry for everything, for letting her talk to you that way, for not standing up for you sooner, for... It's done, Simone said, wiping her tears. You stood up for us now, that's what matters. Over the following weeks, things shifted. Marcus set boundaries with his mother that he stuck to. He didn't take her calls unless Simone was comfortable. He didn't allow her to make comments about their parenting. He didn't let her opinions about his wife be voiced in his presence. Diane tried to work her way back in. She sent expensive gifts. She left voicemails saying she was sorry. But Simone noticed that there was never a direct apology, never a true acknowledgement of her behavior. By Christmas, Diane had given up trying. She sent a card, a nice one but impersonal, and that was it. Marcus's relationship with his mother became distant but cordial. She was still invited to holidays, but the dynamic had changed. She was no longer the matriarch of the family. She was a guest. She had to earn her place just like everyone else. And Simone, she thrived. She and Marcus started marriage counseling, not because their marriage was broken, but because Marcus wanted to work through his people-pleasing patterns and his anxiety about disappointing his parents. Simone got a postpartum therapist to process the trauma of Diane's behavior and the health scare with Zara. By the time Zara turned 1 year old, Simone's mother came to visit from Houston. She held her granddaughter and cried happy tears. She watched Simone with Zara, patient, loving, confident, and she smiled with pride. You're a wonderful mother, Simone's mom, Patricia, said simply. You taught me, Simone replied, hugging her mother. Marcus's father, Roland, came by that same week. It was awkward at first, but he asked if he could hold Zara, and when he did, something shifted in his expression. His granddaughter looked at him with wonder, and he started to cry a little. I'm sorry, he said quietly to Simone and Marcus, for the things I said, for not standing up to your mother sooner. You didn't deserve that. It wasn't Diane's kind of apology, it was real. It was humble, it mattered. Over the next few years, Simone and Marcus built a beautiful life together. They bought a house, a modest one, nothing like the Henderson mansion, but it was theirs. Zara grew into a brilliant, kind, funny little girl who loved her daddy and her mama with a fierceness that made both of them grateful every single day. Marcus eventually left his father's law firm and started his own practice, consulting with small businesses and nonprofits. It paid less, but it was honest work that he felt good about. And Simone went back to her job as a marketing director, working flexible hours so she could be present for their daughter. They joined a church, made real friends, built a life rooted in values that mattered: kindness, integrity, and love. As for Diane, she slowly, reluctantly came to accept Simone. Not because she changed her mind about her, but because she realized she had a choice. Accept Simone and have a relationship with her granddaughter, or double down on her snobbery and lose her son. It took her 3 years, but eventually she showed up at one of Zara's preschool events with an apology that actually sounded like she meant it. "I was wrong," she said to Simone in the school parking lot, the words seeming to physically hurt her to say. "I was wrong about you, about your family, about what matters." Simone accepted the apology, but she didn't go back to trusting Diane completely. That took time, but she let the woman have a place in Zara's life because that's what her daughter wanted. One evening, when Zara was 5 years old, she asked her mom why Grandma Diane used to be mean to her. Simone knelt down to her daughter's level and tried to explain in a way a 5-year-old could understand. "Sometimes people are scared," Simone said carefully. "Your grandmother was scared that if your daddy loved me, he wouldn't love her as much. And instead of talking about her feelings, she tried to make me feel bad. That wasn't right, but it wasn't about me. It was about her being scared." "But you didn't leave Daddy," Zara said with the simple logic of childhood. "No, I didn't, because real love doesn't work that way. Your daddy can love his mother and love me too, just like you can love me and love your daddy. Love isn't a pie with a limited number of slices." Zara nodded, satisfied with that answer. Later that night, after Zara was asleep, Simone and Marcus sat on their back porch looking at the Texas stars. He wrapped his arm around her and she leaned against him. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For choosing us, for standing up for me, for not letting your mother's fear destroy our family." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I was being weak. Thank you for believing in us when I was doubting." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had chosen each other, day after day, even when it was hard. And that, everyone, is the truth about family, about strength, and about what it really means to stand up for the people you love. Simone's story reminds us that our worth isn't determined by our bank account, our family name, or what other people think of us. It's determined by our character, our kindness, and our willingness to protect the ones we love. If Simone inspired you, let us know in the comments. And if you have a similar story, share it with us. We want to hear from you. Moral of this story: sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones closest to us. Sometimes those people are afraid of change, afraid of losing control, afraid of their place in the world being threatened. But fear is never an excuse to treat someone poorly. And love, real love, requires boundaries, requires honesty, and requires choosing your partner over your parents' approval. Simone's story teaches us that your worth is not determined by your circumstances. It teaches us that humility and hard work are more valuable than pretense and status. And it teaches us that when you stand up for yourself, when you speak your truth, when you refuse to be diminished, you give permission to everyone around you to do the same. The most important lesson: real family is not about blood or status or money. Real family is about people who choose you every single day, even when it's hard, even when there are consequences, even when it would be easier to stay silent. Choose your people wisely, and once you've chosen them, don't let anyone, not even family, convince you that they're not worth fighting for. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. And remember, your story matters, your voice matters, and your life is worth living fully and boldly.